The champagne flute slipped from my calloused fingers, crystal shattering against Italian marble. I stood there, 62 years of road dust and diesel fuel suddenly feeling like a stain on this pristine venue. My son's voice still echoed in my ears. "Dad, you weren't supposed to come. You'll embarrass us." I turned and walked out of that baby shower, each step heavier than the last. 26 years of raising Marcus alone, and this was my invitation to meet my first grandchild. Through a closed door, with a security guard making sure I stayed on the right side of it. My name is Thomas Reed. For 40 years, I've been a long-haul truck driver, crisscrossing this country in an 18-wheeler. It's honest work, hard work. The kind that puts food on tables and kids through college. The kind that apparently makes your son ashamed to introduce you to his in-laws. Let me back up. It started 3 months ago when Marcus called with the news. "Dad, Jessica's pregnant. We're having a baby." I could hear the joy in his voice, the same excitement I'd felt when his mother told me she was carrying him. Linda died when Marcus was 2. Cancer took her fast, and it became just the two of us against the world. I raised that boy in a 2-bedroom apartment above a mechanic's shop. While other kids had 2 parents at soccer games, Marcus had me when I wasn't on the road. I worked overnight halls so I could be home for his school plays. Double shifts to afford the good school district. Triple runs during Christmas so he'd have presents under our modest tree. "That's incredible, son," I told him that day, my voice thick. "I'm going to be a grandfather." "Yeah, Dad. Listen, Jessica's parents want to throw a baby shower. Nothing big, just family." "Of course. Just tell me when and where." There was a pause. "It's going to be pretty fancy, Dad. Jessica's family. Well, they like to do things a certain way." I should have heard the warning in his tone. But I was too excited, already imagining holding my grandchild, teaching them to fish like I'd taught Marcus, passing down the good parts of the Reed family legacy. Jessica's family, the Montgomerys. I'd met them exactly twice. Once at the engagement party, where her father, Richard, had given me a handshake so limp it felt like holding a dead fish. And once at the wedding, where her mother, Patricia, had introduced me to her friends as Marcus's father, who couldn't make it, while I stood right there in my best suit. They lived in Preston Hills, one of those suburbs where the lawns are manicured by professionals and the houses have names instead of numbers. Richard ran some kind of investment firm. Patricia sat on charity boards. They drove matching Mercedes and vacationed in the Hamptons. I drove a Peterbilt and vacationed at rest stops. But Marcus loved Jessica, and she seemed to make him happy. So I kept my mouth shut and my wallet open. I'd given them $50,000 for their house, down payment money I'd saved for my retirement, driving extra runs, skipping meals, wearing the same clothes until they fell apart. "Use it to build your future," I'd told Marcus when I handed him the check. He'd hugged me, told me I was the best dad in the world. That was 18 months ago. The baby shower invitation came by mail. Heavy cardstock, embossed letters, the kind of fancy I couldn't even pronounce. Mr. and Mrs. Richard Montgomery request your presence at a celebration for their daughter Jessica and son-in-law Marcus. My name wasn't on it. I called Marcus. "Hey, son, got the baby shower invitation. Looks like they forgot to include my name." Another pause. Longer this time. "Dad, about that. Jessica's mother is handling the guest list, and it's mostly her family and friends. You know how these things are." "I'm family, Marcus." "I know, Dad, but it's complicated. The Montgomerys have a lot of business associates coming, and Jessica wants everything to be perfect. Maybe we can do something separate, just us. I'll bring the baby by after they're born." Something cold settled in my chest. "You don't want me at your baby shower." "It's not that I don't want you there. It's just, Dad, can we talk about this later? I'm at work." He worked at Montgomery Investments. Richard had gotten him the position right out of college, despite Marcus having a degree in education. "Better opportunities in finance," Richard had said. Marcus had been an analyst there for 4 years now, wearing suits that cost more than my monthly rent. I should have pushed back that day on the phone, should have demanded to be included, but I didn't. I told myself that maybe Marcus was right, that maybe I wouldn't fit in with the Montgomerys crowd, that maybe it was better to wait. My buddy Ron, Another long-haul driver I'd known for 20 years told me I was being a fool. "Tommy, that's your grandson they're celebrating," he said over coffee at our usual truck stop. "You don't let them shut you out. You show up. You belong there more than any of those country club phonies." Ron was right. He usually was. So I went. I bought a gift, a handmade wooden rocking horse I'd found at a craft fair, the kind of thing that might become a family heirloom. I put on my best outfit, the suit I'd worn to Marcus's college graduation. I drove my personal truck, a beat-up Ford F-150 with 200,000 miles on it, to the address on the invitation. The venue was called the Ashford Estate. It wasn't someone's home, but a private event space with columns and fountains and a circular driveway where a valet in a vest was parking cars. I pulled up behind a Tesla and handed my keys to a kid who couldn't hide his grimace at my truck's condition. Inside, the place looked like something from a magazine, white and gold everything, balloons in shades of cream and champagne, tables loaded with food I couldn't name, a champagne tower, an ice sculpture of a stork, every woman in designer dresses, every man in blazers that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. And there, in the center of it all, was Marcus. My son, 28 years old, 6 feet tall, my eyes but his mother's smile, wearing a suit that fit him perfectly, laughing with a group of men in their 30s, holding a glass of something amber-colored. He looked happy, successful, like he belonged in this world of crystal and marble. I started toward him, the wooden rocking horse under my arm. He saw me. Our eyes met across the room, and his face changed. The smile disappeared, his jaw tightened. He said something to the men around him and walked toward me fast, intercepting me before I could reach the main party area. "Dad," his voice was low, urgent. "What are you doing here?" "I came for the baby shower, son. Brought a gift for my grandchild." He glanced around, checking if anyone was watching. "Dad, I told you this was complicated." "You said we'd talk. We never did. This isn't the time." He took my arm, steering me toward a side hallway. "You need to leave." That's when I heard her. Patricia Montgomery's voice, crystalline and sharp, carrying across the marble foyer. "Marcus, darling, is everything all right?" "Who's that man?" Jessica appeared next to her mother, beautiful in a flowing maternity dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Her hand rested on her pregnant belly. "My grandchild, growing inside her." "It's nothing, Patricia," Marcus said quickly. "Just someone from my old neighborhood." Old neighborhood. Like I was some distant acquaintance, like I hadn't raised him from diapers to diploma. Patricia's eyes narrowed as she looked at me. Recognition flickered. "Oh, Thomas, isn't it? Marcus's father." The way she said father, like it was a disease. "Yes, ma'am. I came to celebrate." "Marcus, I thought we discussed the guest list." Patricia turned to her daughter. "Jessica, sweetie, I told you we couldn't have any unexpected arrivals. The caterer has an exact count." Jessica looked at Marcus, then at me. I saw something in her eyes. Not quite pity. More like embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. This is really just for close family in our social circle. Maybe you could come by the house another time?" The rocking horse suddenly felt heavy in my hands. "I am close family," I said quietly. "I'm the baby's grandfather." "Of course you are," Patricia said, in that tone rich people use when they're trying to be polite while dismissing you. "But today is already quite full. I'm sure you understand." I looked at my son. "Marcus?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad, please, don't make this harder. You weren't invited. You should go." There it was. The words that would replay in my head for hours afterward. You weren't invited. From the boy I'd sacrificed everything for. The boy I'd worked myself to exhaustion to provide for. The boy whose college loans I'd paid off $180,000 over 6 years' money I'd earned one grueling mile at a time. "I see," I said softly. That's when Richard Montgomery appeared, drink in hand, jovial smile on his face. "What's the hold-up?" "Oh." His smile faltered when he saw me. "Thomas, this is unexpected." "He was just leaving," Patricia said quickly. "Actually," Richard said, and I heard the calculation in his voice, Perhaps Thomas would like to stay for just a moment. We haven't had a chance to properly thank him for his contribution to the happy couple. Contribution. Like my $50,000 was some corporate donation. That's not necessary, I said. No, I insist. In fact, why don't you join us in the main room? I'm about to make a toast. Marcus's face went pale. Dad, really, you don't have to. But Richard was already steering me into the party space, his hand on my shoulder like we were old friends. I realized now it was a power play. He wanted to show everyone there, show Marcus who was really in control. The conversations quieted as we entered. 50, maybe 60 people, all turning to look at the man in the 10-year-old suit carrying a handmade toy. Richard tapped his glass. Everyone, I want to introduce someone special. This is Thomas Reed, Marcus's father. Thomas, why don't you tell everyone what you do? Every eye on me, including my sons. I'm a truck driver, I said. A truck driver, Richard repeated, like it was quaint. How wonderful. The backbone of America, isn't that what they say? Thomas here has been very generous to the young couple. In fact, I believe you gave them quite a substantial gift for their house, didn't you? He was setting me up. I could feel it. I helped where I could, I said carefully. Helped, Richard chuckled. Well, we all help where we can, don't we? Of course, some of us are in a position to help more than others. I've set up a trust fund for my first grandchild. $500,000 to start, growing until they turn 25. Making sure they'll never want for anything, never have to worry about. He paused, looking at me. Having to work too hard. The implication hung in the air. The guests murmured appreciatively. Jessica beamed at her father. Patricia raised her glass, and Marcus looked at the floor. That's when the champagne flute slipped from my fingers. The crash silenced the room. Everyone stared at the shattered crystal on the pristine marble, bubbles fizzing across the floor like my dreams draining away. I'm sorry, I said to no one in particular. I'll clean that up. I bent down, but Richard stopped me. No, we have staff for that. Perhaps it's best if you... I'll go, I said, standing up. I looked at Marcus one more time. Congratulations, son. I hope you have everything you want. I set the wooden rocking horse on the nearest table and walked out. The valet brought my truck around. I tipped him $5, probably more than any of those other guests had given him, and drove. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I drove to the truck stop, where Ron and I usually met. It was Sunday afternoon, but I knew he'd be there. Ron was always there. He took one look at my face and poured me coffee without asking. That bad? He said. I told him everything. The whole humiliating scene. When I finished, Ron was quiet for a long minute. Tommy, he said finally, I'm going to say something, and you're not going to like it. Go ahead. That boy didn't learn to be ashamed of you on his own. You taught him. I started to protest, but Ron held up his hand. Every time you worked extra shifts instead of showing up to his events because you were embarrassed about being the only dad in a flannel shirt while the others wore khakis. Every time you let his teachers or his friends' parents talk down to you without saying a word. Every time you apologized for what you did for a living instead of being proud of it. You taught Marcus that truck driving was something to be ashamed of. I was trying to give him opportunities I never had. And you did. You gave him too many. You paid for everything, asked for nothing, and never showed him the value of what you were sacrificing. That fancy college? He never had to work a day to pay for it. That house? Handed to him. He's never had to struggle, never had to earn anything. And now he thinks that's normal. That's on both of you. I wanted to argue, but Ron's words cut too close to the truth. So, what do I do? I asked. Ron looked at me over his coffee mug. You teach him what you should have taught him years ago. You show him actions have consequences. I spent the rest of that Sunday driving, just driving, thinking, remembering. I thought about Linda, about the promises I'd made at her funeral. I'll take care of him, I'd whispered to her casket. He'll have everything. I'll make sure he's never alone. I'd kept that promise, maybe too well. I thought about every parent-teacher conference I'd missed because I was hauling freight across 3 states. Every birthday I'd celebrated a day late because I was still on the road. Every time Marcus said, It's okay, Dad. When I couldn't make it to something important, I thought I was being a good father by providing, by sacrificing, by making sure he had money for college and a good home and a future that didn't involve rest stop, coffee, and sleeping in a truck cab. But I'd never taught him the most important thing: respect. Not just respect for me, but respect for honest work, for sacrifice, for the people who build their lives with their hands and their backs. By the time I got home that night, I knew what I had to do. Monday morning, I called my bank. The same bank where I'd co-signed Marcus and Jessica's mortgage 6 months ago. They'd needed my signature because Marcus's new job, despite the impressive title, didn't have enough history for the loan amount they wanted. $350,000 for a house in Preston Hills. I need to speak to someone about removing myself as a co-signer, I told the representative. Sir, you can't simply remove yourself from a co-signed loan. The other borrowers would need to refinance, or you'd need to negotiate with them. What if I invoke the clause that allows me to withdraw if there's a material change in my financial situation? Silence. Sir, that's a very specific clause. Not many people know about it. I knew about it because I'd read every word of that mortgage agreement before I signed it. 40 years of reading contracts, shipping manifests, insurance documents, lease agreements for my truck had taught me to pay attention to the fine print. I'm retiring, I lied. I can no longer guarantee the financial support that justified my co-signing. I want to exercise my right to withdraw, which requires the primary borrowers to either refinance in their own names or begin making the full payments independently within 30 days. More silence. I'll need to transfer you to our mortgage department. It took 3 hours and multiple conversations, but by the end of the day, it was done. The bank would send Marcus a letter explaining that his co-signer had withdrawn and that he had 30 days to refinance the loan independently or face default proceedings. Then I made my second call. Richard Montgomery's office had a receptionist who sounded like she gargled with champagne. Montgomery Investments. How may I direct your call? I need to speak with Richard Montgomery about Marcus Reed. Regarding? Tell him it's Thomas Reed, Marcus's father. He'll want to take this call. I was put on hold for 5 minutes. Then Richard's smooth voice came on the line. Thomas, what an unexpected pleasure. I trust there are no hard feelings about yesterday? No hard feelings, I said. I'm calling about something else. About Marcus. Marcus is one of our most promising analysts. If this is about his position, it's about how he got that position. Another pause, colder this time. I'm not sure I follow. 4 years ago, Marcus applied to your firm. He had a degree in education, no finance background, no relevant experience. But you hired him anyway. Do you remember why? He interviewed well, showed promise. He interviewed well because I coached him. I spent 2 weeks helping him study for that interview. I also mentioned to you, at his engagement party, that I'd hauled freight for Donaldson Industries for 15 years. You asked if I knew Jack Donaldson. I said I'd met him a few times at shipping conferences. Richard said nothing. What I didn't mention was that Jack Donaldson owed me a favor. Big favor. 5 years ago, his company had a shipment of critical components that absolutely had to reach a factory in Texas within 18 hours, or they'd lose a multi-million-dollar contract. Every other driver turned down the job. Too tight a timeline, too risky. I took it. Drove straight through, 20 hours, no sleep. Made the delivery with 40 minutes to spare. Jack told me if I ever needed anything, to call him. Thomas, I'm not sure why you're telling me this. I'm telling you because I called in that favor for Marcus. I called Jack and asked him to recommend my son to you. Jack Donaldson, one of your biggest clients. So you hired Marcus, not because of his talent, but because Jack Donaldson asked you to. Because I asked Jack to. The silence stretched out. Marcus doesn't know this, Richard said finally. No, he thinks he earned that job on his own merit, just like he thinks he earned his position in your family, his place at that baby shower, his right to be ashamed of where he came from. What do you want, Thomas? I want you to tell him the truth. Tell him that his job, his career, his entire professional life exists because his truck driver father called in a favor. Tell him that the world he thinks he's too good for is the world that built everything he has. And if I don't, then I call Jack Donaldson myself. I tell him how you've been treating my son, turning him into someone who's ashamed of his own father. Jack's a family man. 3 sons, all working class. I don't think he'd appreciate knowing that his recommendation was used to help you create another entitled corporate clone who looks down on honest work. He might reconsider his business relationship with Montgomery Investments. It was a bluff, mostly. I didn't know if Jack would actually care. But Richard didn't know that. You're threatening me. I'm teaching my son a lesson he should have learned years ago. Actions have consequences. Choices matter. You're just collateral damage. I hung up before he could respond. The next call was harder. Marcus Reed speaking. Son, it's Dad. Silence. Dad, I'm at work. Can this wait? No. I need to tell you something. I'm removing myself as co-signer from your mortgage. What? Dad, you can't? I can, and I did. You'll get a letter from the bank this week. You have 30 days to refinance. Dad, Jessica and I can't qualify for that loan amount on our own. Not yet. I've only been at this job for 4 years. We don't have enough history. You know that. Then I suggest you talk to your father-in-law about helping you. He has that trust fund money. $500,000. Growing. Surely he can spare some for his daughter's house. Why are you doing this? Because yesterday, I stood in a room full of people who matter to you, and you introduced me as someone from your old neighborhood. Because you were embarrassed that your truck driver father showed up to celebrate your child. Because I gave you everything and never taught you to value it. Dad, it wasn't like that. It was complicated. Jessica's parents have expectations. So do I, Marcus. I expect my son to not be ashamed of me. I expect him to honor the sacrifices I made. I expect him to teach his child that their grandfather drives a truck for a living, and that's something to be proud of, not hidden away like a dirty secret. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're going to cost us our house. No, son. You cost yourself your house the moment you told me I wasn't invited to my own grandchild's celebration. I'm just helping you understand what you actually value. I hung up. Then I sat in my quiet apartment and waited. The first call came that evening. Jessica, crying. Mr. Reed, please, you have to reconsider. We can't afford to lose our house. I'm 7 months pregnant. Where are we supposed to go? Back to your parents' estate, I imagine. They seem to have plenty of room. My parents don't. She stopped. Please. Marcus is devastated. He's been in his office all afternoon. Good. Maybe he's learning something. The second call came 2 hours later. Marcus, angry now. Dad, Richard fired me. He said there was a conflict of interest, that he couldn't have someone on his team whose family situation created complications. Did you threaten him? I told him the truth, about how you got that job in the first place. What truth? I earned that position. No, Marcus, I earned that position. I called in a favor with Jack Donaldson. Richard hired you because his biggest client asked him to. Because I asked Jack to. Silence. Long, terrible silence. You're lying. Call Jack yourself. Ask him. His number is in my phone. I'll text it to you. I don't believe you. This is just you trying to control me. Trying to punish me for what? For being ashamed of me? You're right. That's exactly what this is. I'm showing you what happens when you burn bridges with the people who built them for you. You're destroying my life. I'm showing you that you never built it yourself. Everything you have, everything you think you earned, came from the back of a truck, and a father who loved you enough to sacrifice everything. And you thanked me by shutting a door in my face. He hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my recliner, the same recliner I'd sat in when Marcus was a baby, rocking him to sleep at 3 a.m. between shifts, and wondered if I'd made the right choice. Ron stopped by around midnight. Heard through the grapevine that you did something nuclear. How'd you hear? Marcus called looking for you. When you didn't answer, he called me. Asked if I knew where you were, if you were okay. Said you'd lost your mind. What'd you tell him? Told him his dad was the sanest man I knew, and maybe he should ask himself why you did what you did. Did he listen? Hung up on me too. Ron settled into my spare chair. So, how do you feel? Like I just cut off my own arm. Good, that means you're human. But Tommy, what's the end game here? You've backed him into a corner. He's got no house, no job, pregnant wife, and a baby on the way. What happens now? He learns to build something himself, or he goes crawling back to the Montgomerys, proves I was right about him all along. And if he does neither? If he just breaks? I didn't have an answer for that. The third call came on Wednesday. Patricia Montgomery, ice in every word. Mr. Reed, I think we need to have a conversation. About what? About your vindictive behavior toward your own son. Jessica is 7 months pregnant and under incredible stress thanks to your actions. If something happens to my grandchild because of you, Mrs. Montgomery, with all respect, where was this concern for my grandchild when you were throwing a party and didn't invite their other grandfather? That was different. That was about maintaining proper social. That was about you thinking you're better than me, than my son. You took Marcus and turned him into someone who's ashamed of where he came from. Well, congratulations. Now he gets to explain to your friends why he's moving back in with his parents because his truck driver dad stopped subsidizing his lifestyle. Richard has offered to help with the house situation. I'm sure he has. Let me guess. He'll cover the mortgage, but Marcus has to sign over part of the equity. Make him beholden. Keep him under Richard's thumb. Because that's how men like your husband operate. Silence. You don't know Richard. I know men who use money to control people. I've met them in every truck stop and shipping office from here to California. Your husband is just a more expensive version. This conversation is over. One more thing, Mrs. Montgomery. When my grandchild is old enough to ask about me, what are you going to tell them? That Grandpa Thomas wasn't good enough to know? That he drove a truck for a living and that was shameful? Because that child is going to figure out eventually that their father came from somewhere. And they might wonder why everyone pretends that somewhere doesn't exist. She hung up without responding. Friday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Thomas Reed? A woman's voice, professional. Yes. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Preston Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about Marcus Reed. You're listed as his emergency contact. My heart stopped. What happened? He's fine. He checked himself in last night experiencing chest pains and anxiety. We've ruled out anything cardiac. He's suffering from acute stress and has asked to speak with you. 20 minutes later, I was at the hospital. Marcus was in a private room, sitting up in bed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His face was pale, his eyes red. Hey, Dad, he said quietly. Hey, son. We looked at each other for a long moment. They said it was a panic attack, Marcus said. I thought I was having a heart attack. Jessica brought me in at 2 in the morning. They kept me overnight for observation. I pulled a chair next to his bed and sat down. I lost the job, he continued. Richard didn't just fire me. He made sure I'd have trouble getting hired anywhere in finance. Called it a conflict of interest, but we both know what it really was. I'm sorry. Are you? He looked at me. Because it feels like you wanted this to happen. Like you wanted to watch me fall. No, Marcus. I wanted you to wake up. Well, I'm awake. I'm unemployed, about to lose my house, and I have a baby coming in 8 weeks. Jessica's parents are offering to let us move in with them, but the price is... He shook his head. The price is too high. What price? Richard wants me to come work for him again. Different department, lower title, less pay. Basically admitting that I can't make it without him, that I need the Montgomerys to survive. Do you? I don't know, Dad. I don't know anything anymore. A week ago, I had a career, a house, a plan for my life. Now I have nothing. You have a wife. You have a baby on the way. You have skills and education. I have a degree in education that I never used because finance paid better. I have 4 years of experience at a firm that just blacklisted me. And I have a father who destroyed my life to teach me a lesson. The anger in his voice was real, but so was the pain. You want to know why I was ashamed, Dad? Marcus said, his voice breaking. You want to know why I didn't want you at that baby shower? Tell me. Because my entire life, I watched you kill yourself for me. I watched you work 70-hour weeks. I watched you fall asleep at my basketball games because you'd driven all night to be there. I watched you eat cheap food and wear old clothes and never, ever do anything for yourself. because you were too busy providing for me. And I hated it. I started to speak, but he held up his hand. I hated watching you sacrifice everything. I hated the pity in people's eyes when they found out I was being raised by a single dad who was never there because he was always working. I hated being the scholarship kid, the one whose dad couldn't afford to donate to the school fundraisers like the other parents. I hated all of it. Marcus. So when I met Jessica, when I got into her world where everything was easy and elegant and no one had to struggle, I wanted that. I wanted to be the person who belonged there, not the truck driver's kid who got lucky. And yeah, I was ashamed. Ashamed that I wanted to leave you behind. Ashamed that I wasn't grateful enough. Ashamed that I looked at your sacrifice and felt embarrassed instead of proud. Tears were streaming down his face now. And you know what the worst part is, Dad? You were right. About all of it. I didn't earn anything. I didn't build anything. I just took and took and took, and I never gave you the one thing you actually wanted. Respect. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I reached for his hand, held it. I'm sorry too, son. Ron told me something. He said I taught you to be ashamed by being ashamed myself, and he was right. I was embarrassed about what I did for a living. I apologize for missing your events. I acted like truck driving was something I did because I couldn't do better, instead of something I chose because it was honest work that fed my family. I taught you that my work was less than, that I was less than. And then I got angry when you believed it. We sat there, father and son, both crying. I don't know how to fix this, Marcus said. Neither do I, but maybe we start with the truth. The truth is, I'm proud of what I do. I'm proud that I raised you on my own. I'm proud that I worked hard to give you opportunities. And I should have taught you to be proud of it too. I want my son to know you, Marcus said quietly. To really know you, not some hidden grandfather who gets visited in secret. I want him to know that his grandpa drives a truck, and that's amazing. That he's strong and reliable and keeps his word. I want him to have what I should have had. Pride in where he comes from. What about Jessica? Her parents? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Jessica is scared. Her parents are livid. They think you're cruel and vindictive. But you know what? Yesterday, when I was sitting in our house, knowing we might lose it, Jessica said something. She said, maybe my parents would help us if I asked. If we agreed to certain conditions. And I realized that's how they operate. Everything has conditions. Everything has strings. They don't give freely. They buy control. And I don't want to live like that. I don't want my son growing up thinking that love comes with price tags and conditions. I'd rather start over with nothing than owe them everything. I felt something shift in my chest. Hope, maybe. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know. I called my old advisor from college, Dr. Patterson. Remember him? He said there's a teaching position opening up at the community college. Adult education, GED programs. It pays about a third of what I was making at Montgomery Investments. But it's something I'd actually be good at, something that matters. That sounds like a start. We'll have to sell the house. Even with a teaching salary, we can't afford it. Jessica's upset, but she's agreed. We'll find an apartment, something smaller. Start building something real, not just something we can show off to impress people. What about the baby? A small smile crossed his face. We're naming him Thomas. Tommy for short. After you. I couldn't speak. Just squeezed his hand. I'm not saying this fixes everything, Dad. I was cruel to you. I disrespected you. I took everything you gave and treated it like it was worthless. That's going to take time to forgive. For both of us. I know. But I want to try. I want my son to have what I didn't have. A grandfather he's proud of. A family that's honest about who they are. A knock on the door? Jessica appeared, looking tired and worried, and very pregnant. She saw me and hesitated. Mr. Reed, she said carefully. Jessica. She came to Marcus's bedside, took his other hand. I heard what you said, about the baby's name. Is that okay? Marcus asked her. She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time. My parents are very angry with you. I imagine so. They say you're trying to destroy our family, that you're bitter and cruel. I understand why they'd think that. But Marcus told me something. He told me that you've been driving trucks for 40 years, that you raised him alone after his mother died, that you worked yourself sick to give him opportunities. Is that true? Yes. And he told me about the down payment, $50,000. That was your retirement money. It was money I wanted him to have. She was quiet for a moment. I grew up with everything, Mr. Reed. Money, education, connections. My parents gave me a trust fund on my 18th birthday. They paid for my wedding. They're setting up another trust for this baby. And I realized yesterday that I don't actually know the value of any of it, because I never had to work for it. Jessica, Marcus started, but she squeezed his hand. No, let me finish. Mr. Reed, what you did was harsh. It scared me. It's still scaring me. But I understand why you did it. We were treating you like you were less than us, when the truth is, you've done more for Marcus than my parents have ever done for me. Because you taught him sacrifice, even if he didn't appreciate it at the time. She took a deep breath. I want to start over. I want to do this right. I want our son to grow up knowing both his grandfathers, and I want him to understand that one of them drives a truck, and that's just as important as one of them managing money. Because maybe more important, because trucks move the world, and money just counts it. I looked at this young woman, 7 months pregnant, choosing something harder because it was right, and I felt my anger finally drain away. I'd like that, I said. We're going to struggle, she said, without Marcus's salary, without my parents' help. It's going to be hard. Hard isn't the same as bad, I said. Some of the best things in life are hard. Marcus laughed, a wet sound. That's what you used to tell me when I complained about homework. Still true. The three of us sat there in that hospital room, the beginning of something new and uncertain, and for the first time in a week, I felt like maybe I hadn't destroyed everything after all. 3 months later, I stood in a modest apartment in a middle-income neighborhood, holding my grandson for the first time. Thomas Marcus Reed Jr. weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces, and had a grip like a trucker already. Hey there, Tommy, I whispered. I'm your grandpa, the one who drives a truck. Marcus and Jessica had sold the house in Preston Hills and bought this 2-bedroom apartment. Marcus was teaching at the community college, coaching high school students through their GEDs. Jessica had gone back to work part-time doing graphic design from home. They were making it work. The Montgomerys had come to see the baby once. It had been strained and formal, Patricia bringing designer baby clothes that would never get worn, and Richard writing a check that Marcus had quietly returned. They'd left after 20 minutes, citing other commitments. But Ron was there, bringing cigars and terrible jokes, and Dr. Patterson, Marcus's old college advisor, who'd become a family friend, and some of Marcus's new colleagues from the college, regular people with regular lives who didn't care about trust funds or investment portfolios. You know what I realized, Dad? Marcus said, watching me hold his son. All those sacrifices you made, all those hours you worked, all that time you gave up, you did it because you loved me. Not because you wanted something in return. Not because you were building up credits to cash in later. Just because that's what fathers do. That's what fathers do, I agreed. I want to be that kind of father. The kind who shows up, even when it's hard. The kind who sacrifices without keeping score. The kind who teaches his son that what you do for a living doesn't define who you are, but how you treat people does. You will be. Little Tommy squirmed in my arms, making a face. I laughed. He's got your expression, I told Marcus. That's the same face you made when you didn't like what you were hearing. Great, I'm in for it. Jessica came over, camera in hand. Can I get a picture of the 3 Thomas Reeds together? Marcus stood next to me, his arm around my shoulder. 3 generations. 3 men who shared a name and, I hoped, would share something more important. Values, character, pride in honest work and honest love. The flash went off. Perfect, Jessica said, looking at the screen. I'm going to frame this one, put it right in the living room where everyone can see it. Even your parents? I asked. She smiled. Especially my parents. Later, after everyone had left, and it was just me and Marcus sitting on the apartment balcony, watching the sunset, he said, I never thanked you. For what? for not giving up on me, for caring enough to make me see what I was becoming. It would have been easier to just walk away. Let me live in that world of fake status and borrowed achievement. But you didn't. You fought for me, even when it meant hurting both of us. That's what fathers do, I said again. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. That's what fathers do. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when the hard words have been said and the healing has begun. My grandson was inside, sleeping in a hand-me-down crib. My son was beside me, building a life on his own terms. And I was here, 62 years old, still driving my truck, still making my runs, still doing honest work. But now, for the first time in a long time, I wasn't doing it alone. I had my family back. Not the fake, fragile family built on money and status, but the real thing. Built on truth and sacrifice and love that doesn't come with conditions. The wooden rocking horse I'd brought to that baby shower sat in Tommy's nursery now. Marcus had gone back to the Montgomery's event venue and retrieved it. "I'm sorry I didn't appreciate it before," he'd said when he brought it home. "It's perfect. It's exactly what Tommy needs." It wasn't the most expensive gift Tommy would receive. The Montgomery's trust fund would give him financial security, and that wasn't nothing. But that wooden horse, made by hand, given with love, carried by a father who'd been turned away but refused to give up on his son, that was something money couldn't buy. That was legacy. And as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I realized that sometimes the hardest thing a father can do isn't sacrifice everything for his child. Sometimes it's teaching them that sacrifice has value, that love requires respect, that you can't build a life on other people's foundations. Sometimes the hardest thing is letting them fall, knowing they might not get back up, but doing it anyway, because it's the only way they'll learn to stand on their own. I'd done that, and my son had fallen. And then, with his wife beside him, and his father waiting, he'd gotten back up. Not in the world of the Montgomerys, where money solved every problem and status mattered more than character, but in the real world, the world I'd always lived in, the world where fathers drive trucks and raise their sons and hold their grandsons and know that this, right here, is what it's all about. "Dad?" Marcus said, breaking the silence. "Yeah, son. Thank you. For everything." I reached over and gripped his shoulder. "You're welcome. Now stop getting sentimental. You're a father now. You've got to be tough." He laughed. Says the guy who cried for 10 minutes straight when Tommy was born. "That was different. That was allergies." "Sure, Dad, allergies." We sat there together, watching the sun disappear below the horizon, the day ending, and tomorrow waiting, with all its possibilities and challenges, and hard, beautiful, real moments. And I thought, not for the first time and certainly not for the last, this is what it's all about. This is why you do it. Not for gratitude or recognition or even for love sometimes. You do it because that's what fathers do. And that's enough.